I'd like to share a little bit about the mission school. I was 8 years old when the Indian agent came to pick us up. I'd never left home ever or even went to camp anywhere. I didn't know a word of English, and it was really different and very cool. And there was this one incident where I have a younger brother. He wasn't even quite 6 years old, and him and I got taken, and an older brother, 3 of us. And then a few days after, we were allowed to go play outside. And I didn't know there was an imaginary line like this, like boys on one side, girls on this side. Like we were never allowed to play together. The girls stayed on one side, and the boys over there, even if it was your brother. And then I didn't know there was a line there. And so when I went out for recess, my little brother come running to me, and he was crying. And he said, I want to go home and pray. And I grabbed him and I hugged him. All of a sudden, somebody pulled my hair and just separated us like this and said, bad, bad, bad. I didn't know what that word meant at the time, but we were not allowed to hold hands or even hug anybody, ever. Ever, the whole time we were there. If you had a little friend and you want to hug them or even hold their hand, that was bad. Everything was bad. You couldn't, you were allowed to sit next to someone, but you were not allowed to solo. And that's what my Auntie Mary grew up with, and that's what I grew up with. And thank God I had, good parents that loved me and so me. But for a few years, I was angry. When I'd come home, I was angry. When I was a teenager, I was angry. And I used to wonder why we had to go to this mission school. And my dad said, he tried to explain to me that he loved me, but I needed an education, and this was how it was. And that's why he let me go. And I know that now, but it took me a long time to understand why we had to leave. And then a few years down the road, we were like maybe 2 years, and then we all had, they call them little charges. We looked after a younger person, that little person that came to school the first time. So that was Kathleen. I took care of her. I made sure her face was washed. And I was like maybe 10 years old, and she could have been about 7. I wasn't much older than her, but I took care of her. Yeah, I made sure her hair was combed, and her fingernails were clean, and we took care of her. And that's how it was. And then the following year, I took care of another of her sisters. And that's how we kind of took care of the younger ones. We were taught a lot of responsibility. We learned that and learned how to take care of each other. It was a very sad time. And just recently now I can talk about it. I couldn't talk about it before. And it was hidden. We were not allowed to tell our parents how bad it was. The nuns would say, you do not talk about what happens here, it stays here. And I remember I might have been about 12 years old, and we were allowed to write a note home. We were allowed to write a letter. And I wrote a letter and I told my dad. They didn't know how to read and write, they'd never been in school, but I had an older sister that could read. And I wrote in there that it was a horrible place, and I was sad, and I wanted to come home, and it was not a good place to be. And the nun came to read it. She ripped it up in front of me and she said, no, you write how good it is here, how you love to be here. That's what you write, and I will mail it. But if you don't write that, I'm not sending nothing home. And so I thought, I sat there and I thought, what could I write about? And I had a little puppy at home, a little mini puppy, about that. And her name was Tippy, and I loved her. So every letter I wrote home, I asked about Tippy, because that was safe, because I could ask about that, but I couldn't tell how horrible it was to be. And then I'd come home in the summertime, my sister would laugh at me, my older sister. Lillian, every time you write a letter home, you're always asking about your dog. You never even asked about us, or and I couldn't tell her that I couldn't do it, that I was not allowed to. But I laughed with her. That's funny. But it was not funny, but that's how it goes. Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing, Andes. I know how to hug. You see, you share, you get a hug.
You share anyway.